Hi, it's Joni Michaels, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to Joe Clark, host of Consider This Program. Joe's a certified financial planner and former professor at Purdue University. He's the managing partner for the Financial Enhancement Group. Joe's passion is teaching people about their money so they don't make inefficient financial decisions that lead to frustration and devastation. The Financial Enhancement Group serves more than 900 families in 31 states and manages more than $400 million. The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people who don't want to worry about their money so they don't make inefficient financial decisions. Joe addresses your questions about money in 5 critical elements of finance: retirement planning, or what we like to call your life after work, tax planning, investment planning, life happens, the good, the bad, and the ugly of life, and legacy planning. The Financial Enhancement Group can be reached at 800-928-4001 or visit yourlifeafterwork.com. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through World Equity Group, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC.
Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
And we are happy to have you along. I have no idea what you're doing, but I hope you're in East Central Indiana in the most perfect weather that God has ever created. I love fall.
I do too. Got a little chilly over the weekend though.
It's 37 degrees when I walked the dog last night, and then I get to come in. So we taped the show earlier in the week, but I come in and it's 60 in the day and it's sunny. Now granted, golf balls do hide under the big maple leaves. I know. But you can always take a leaf blower in your golf cart, right? You can.
Haven't seen many golf courses provide that.
No, but one of my buddies was an engineer from General Motors, pretty high up level. He shows up this time of year with his leaf blower in the golf cart. And he said, I walk once a year to remind myself why I don't walk. And that was 10 years ago was the last time, I think he said.
Well, if you hit the ball in the fairway, they don't have leaves in the
fairway. Not at the Anderson Country Club. we have big trees and lots of leaves, more so than you do at Crooked Stick. But, it's just part of it. It's part of the deal. But you're right. Most of the time, if you hit it in the fairway, you're okay. We got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about what we call your life after work. Retirement is a splendid thing, but it means so many different things to so many different people that it's hard to talk about. And what we have found is that most people engage in something else when they go to retire, one way or the other, either for money or for philanthropy, places they want to volunteer, but they find something to do. So, Ken, I'm going to test Angie's mind on it's not fairy tales, and it's not wives' tales. It's is it fables that we would talk about it? So
I don't
you
know.
had the bear that had the porridge that was just right, and the one that was too hot, and then the one that was too cold. Was that
the Goldilocks and 3 Bears?
Yeah.
The Goldilocks. That's what. So what is that technically called? Is that a fable? Is that a
I don't know.
Well, a lot of good YouTube.
Children's story?
It's a children's story. Okay. So you all know the story of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, apparently, where, one bear had soup that was too hot, and one bear had soup that was too cold, and one that was just right. Well, retirement's about being all about just right. Today we're going to talk about people who want to put it off. So maybe we'll call it a little bit too hot or a little bit too cold, whichever way you want to go. And people who want to retire a little bit early, and things that they need to consider. So Ken's eyes just lit up, right? We're also going to talk about falling interest rates and things that you might want to consider for you. And last but not least, something I would strongly recommend you stay away from, but it's using a 60-day rollover inside of your IRAs, the pitfalls and the problems. We get calls on that every year. Never recommend them unless you have to do it, but we will walk you through it. Give us a call, 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. We know you care about your money, but are you tired of worrying about it? The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people just like you who don't want to worry about their money. As fiduciaries, the team at the Financial Enhancement Group will care for your nest egg just like they would care for their own if they were in your situation. There are many decisions you'll need to make as you face retirement, and the team at the Financial Enhancement Group is here to help you. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to set up a time to meet. The confusion and complexity of retirement is almost as daunting as is the excitement of retirement. Don't let your fear and frustration of taxes and investing derail your retirement. Call the Financial Enhancement Group at 800-928-4001. They'll give you a complimentary second opinion on your strategy for retirement. Begin your adventure in your life after work. Call 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Now back to Consider This Program with Joe Clark.
Hi, I'm Joe Clark, a host of Consider This. Hey, there are two things that you can do in retirement other than getting it just right. You can put it off early, or you can take it and delay it as long as possible. We're going to do two conversations on this morning, so join us right here on Consider This program as we discuss in this first conversation putting off retirement, what it looks like for you. If you want to know more, you can give us a call at the Financial Enhancement Group, 800-928-4001, or go to yourlifeafterwork.com. If you're calling 800-928-4001, ask for Angie. Remember, if you want to do this on your own, that's your business. If you're looking for a fiduciary, that is our business. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
Welcome, everyone, to Consider This. Happy to have you along. I know for most of you listening, it's a bright and early, hopefully sunny, but probably crisp morning.
Yes.
And as we're talking about retirement, if you will, we always call it Your Life After Work here at the Financial Enhancement Group. If you're going to put it off, I guess we would call that kind of winter. Right? So it should be crisp. And when we talk about putting it off early, maybe we can talk a little bit about spring. So, Angie, this is your baby. You're in charge of all things questions. And remember, if you want to put a question on the show or have something you want to find out, you can call Angie at 800-928-4001, and she will be happy to get with you. So go ahead, Angie.
Okay. I actually came across two different articles at the same time. One was about what if you want to put off...
What happens when you buy people two monitors? Just saying.
Double monitors up. What if you want to put off retirement like Warren Buffett? Or signs that you're ready to retire early. So I got them both out and kind of read through them to see, what kind of considerations would you have in this first segment, which is what if we put it off? So a couple of things that it said you might want to pay attention to would be, of course, your physical health.
Mm-hmm. So physical health is an issue, right? If you're going to put off retirement. And again, there's more than one way to contrast this, right?
Yeah.
So some people put off retirement because they are broke, right? So they put it off because they really couldn't do it, right? Or don't want to live the lifestyle that their meager savings and Social Security and anything else would avail them to. So they work sometimes at stores, fast food places. Sometimes they have reasonably good jobs, but they don't want to quit because they have no choice financially. They have to stay there. And then you run a risk of your health giving out.
Yes.
Because once you reach that full retirement age, your disability benefits are gone. So if you're working at 68 and it's because you are needing to make the money and suddenly disability kicks in, you've got Social Security to live on, but not the Social Security disability benefit per se. Now, if you're just working because you're Warren Buffett and you obviously don't need the money, but you love what you do, hopefully my picture is still there when I'm his age, because I love what it is that I do. I have no intentions of retiring, right? So that means other things that you've got to consider, but health is certainly one of those.
One of them is you might face higher Medicare Part B premiums.
That's because your income's higher. So under the current rules, we're all eligible for Medicare when we reach age 65. Even if you're working, you're still eligible for Medicare if you've done everything that qualifies you for that process. Remember, Medicaid is state provided. If you're broke, Medicare you get for being a U.S. citizen and paying into the system for the years that you've had it, right? So Medicare Part B is what comes in and pays for things that Medicare itself doesn't pay for. And those premiums are stiff. And the more income you have, the higher they go. So if you're in the top end of the 22% marginal tax bracket, you will wind up paying a higher Medicare Part B premium. And it could be a few $1,000s a month more if you were there just because you're making extra money. So you really need to consider that in the equation.
Okay. Well, I thought we could incorporate some questions that we've had in the past, and here's one of them. If you are still working at age 70 and a half, can you roll your IRA into your 401k to avoid your RMD?
So that's an advanced question is what I would call that.
Okay.
If you have an IRA, even if you're working, you have to take out required minimum distributions.
At 70 and a half,
At 70 and a half.
Excellent.
Even if you're the president of the United States and you're still working, if you happen to have an IRA, you have to pull the money out.
Okay.
However, if you have a 401k and you're less than a 5% owner and you're still working at 70 and a half, you do not have to begin required minimum distributions out of that 401k. Now, one thing people forget is you have to take distributions out of every 401k plan that you have. So you really would want to consolidate them. Trick is not owning more than 5%. And then the next part is, Angie, the TPA, the third-party administrator, and your plan administrator has to agree to let you roll your IRAs in. The Department of Labor clearly allows it, but it is up to the plan administrator to let that happen. So yes, that is a viable option. There's some moving parts that you got to be aware of, but it works out well.
Okay. How long can you put off Social Security?
Well, there does no good to put it off past 70 under the current law, because that's when your benefit maximizes. In fact, if you forget to sign up at 72, they will actually send you checks all the way back till age 70. You will get them. And every now and then, this is not me encouraging you to involve in this reindeer game, as they would say. I guess we're closer to Halloween. But
Right.
there are people who intentionally don't take it the year they turn 70, knowing that they will still get the money a year later because they're going to work at age 70 and their tax bracket would be higher.
Oh.
And so they wait another year to get two sets of payments when they believe their tax rate would be lower. So there are those people out there who do fully recognize, and it's one of the reasons we do the show. There are 2 tax codes in the United States, Ken Dilger.
One for the informed and one for the uninformed.
Very, very good. And Angie, people believe it's one for the
Rich and one for the poor.
and we know that it's not. So if the 3 of us are doing our job, at the end of the day, you will learn to be informed rather than uninformed.
Let me ask you this. Is there a max on how much you pay into Social Security?
There is. Social Security used to be, all of it used to be maxed out at a number. It's somewhere this year around 127,000. A few years back, under the Obama administration, they broke out Medicare from Social Security. So the part that you pay into Social Security does max out at some magical number. And it's around 130 grand. It's indexed for inflation. The amount you pay taxes on for Medicare, that additional 2.9%, 1.45 for you, 1.45 for your employer, that continues on indefinitely.
Well, this last question kind of has to do with how your Social Security benefits, how they come up with a number. And the question is, if you have a higher paying job at age 65, than you have had for the previous 30 years, can it impact your benefits?
Absolutely, and that's an important thing. So it's you get nailed twice on this, one positively, one negatively, and some would argue it's not even that negative. The bottom line is, if you're getting Social Security while working before full retirement age, there is a type of penalty that's imposed. So you don't want to really make a lot of money and be on Social Security at the same time if you can help it. But unlike most employers that have defined benefit plans, Ken, where you get a pension, and I don't know the NFL's, but I would assume it's based on a certain number of years you had to work and then your high contract over the end, your highest contractors and an average of all of
the
them.
The pension does not matter how much you made in the NFL. It's
one
per
more
year.
One more reason I should have got beat up on Sundays instead of being a financial planner. In most companies it's 5, your high 5, and Social Security it's your high 30. And so if you work at 65 and it's more than what you made at a bag boy at Ross Grocery Stores, one of us might have done that, then that would replace one of those years. But now I guess I have 30 years in financial planning, so things change. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark along with Ken Dilger, Angie Kinger. You got a question, give us a call, 800-928-4001. If you want to sit down with one of our advisory team, just tell Angie, 800-928-4001. We'll be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. Joe's been hosting financial radio programs for over 20 years, and during his 7 years at Purdue, Joe developed the 5 critical elements. You see, there are 5 areas we all go through that can impact and even derail our retirement plans. YourLifeAfterWork.com has been focused on you on your retirement for over 20 years. You may have had a 401k as well as IRAs. Those are all defined contribution plans. Consider This program is about your defined contribution plans becoming defined distributions. You see, we all exit. You'll either take money out of those retirement plans when you decide or when the IRS decides, or your heirs will have to deal with the situation, but we all exit. I encourage you to call 800-928-4001 to meet with one of the talented financial advisors at the Financial Enhancement Group. I've listened to this show for years, and what Joe says just makes sense. Don't you think it's time for you to call 800-928-4001, yourlifeafterwork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Retirement is one of those things that's kind of vague to a degree. We call it Your Life After Work at the Financial Enhancement Group for a reason. But the reality is, some people put it off as long as they can, and others do it as early as they possibly can. So in the last conversation, we talked about putting off retirement until you're into your 70s even. Now we're going to talk about it taking that money early. I'm Joe Clark, your host.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
We're happy to have you along here on Consider This program. Angie Kinzer is in charge of all things questions. If you've got something you would like to ask her, it's 800-928-4001. Angie, fire away.
Okay. This kind of was stemmed from a question that we get very often. And the question is, how do you know when you've saved enough money to retire? So since we just talked about putting it off as long as possible, we wanted to try to make some points on considerations if you retire early.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what does retirement early mean, Angie?
Maybe retiring before the normal that you can start getting Social Security.
Okay. So there's two things that I would put early. One is out of force. Remember the last time I saw the statistic, and granted it's been a few years ago, but we had more people on Social Security disability than we did on Social Security. Now, I don't know that still is true, but it is a whopper of a number if you ever go to Social Security Administration to see the number of people who are much younger than I am who are in the room that are getting benefits. So some people retire early because they're forced into it. Their job went away, right? They were good at putting on horseshoes, and all of a sudden we had a car. So sometimes they get disintermediated, so it does happen. And then other people decide they want to retire early because they think they have enough. So fire away your questions.
Okay. As far as one of the considerations would be inflation. So the question is, how can you protect? Is there any way that you can protect or look ahead against inflation?
So the Socrates said, the value of your life will be based on the quality of questions that you ask. Now, I was not there to hear him say that, but it sounds about right, right? Because I will tell you, the better your questions, the better off you are, right? So what is the inflation question really, really asking? And it gets into purchasing power. It gets into how long does my dollar last? And so I'm going to give you, and I know you have more questions and you're going to get frustrated with me because I'm going to spend the whole 2 minutes on this, but it matters. So Ken, I was not in the industry in 1980. And since you're 4 years younger, you certainly weren't working at that point in time.
Correct.
But you probably know, since you're in the mortgage industry, that 1980 was peak of inflation.
Right.
The average mortgage rate, 30-year mortgage rate across the country, was literally 18%.
Wow.
Can't even imagine, right? Today we're looking at what, 3.5, 3.75?
Right around 4% probably.
Okay, we'll call
give or
it
take.
Just a wee bit smaller than 18.
Yeah, right.
Right. So here's the deal. So Ken, because he was going to make a lot of money in the NFL, gave me $1 million. Now, obviously, we're making this up in 1980. And Ken looked at me, and Ken's bigger than I am, and I don't get to say that about many people. And Ken looks at me and says, Joe, here's my $1 million. Don't lose it. Does that sound about right,
Of
Mr.
course.
Duggar? Yeah. Here's my $1 million. Don't lose it. And I'm no dummy. I don't want to get beat up. So I take the $1 million and I put it in CDs that are yielding about 14% in 1980.
Wow.
And Angie, that means you have $140,000 a year income. That's pretty sweet, isn't it?
It is.
Right.
I like that.
And in 1990, I show up, and what do you tell me about your $1 million?
Don't lose it.
Don't lose it, right? And so now the only problem is I've done my job. You told me not to lose it. You had $1 million. You've still got $1 million. But now the interest rates have dropped to 5.5%, and Ken, suddenly your income's down to $55,000 a year. In 2000, it's down to $50,000 a year. In 2010, it's down to about $20,000 a year. And today in 2019, you're up to about a whopping $25,000 a year income on that $1 million. I did my job for 4 decades, and you've got nothing left to show for your money because you thought about the wrong things, right? So inflation is the destruction of purchasing power. It's what does it take for me to buy a gallon of gas, a loaf of bread, or pay my utility bill into the future. And we've got to do things to make sure that you're aware of that. The longer your retirement span, the more susceptible you are to an unknown amount of inflation. Now, I argue that inflation is more controllable than some, but the bottom line is the longer you're alive, the more assumptions have to come into your play.
Okay, another consideration would be I know we talked about health when putting it off too long to retire, but this is more about your emotional mindset. And so there was actually an article out today, and it was talking about early retirement, and it said it may be bad for your health, and it may even kill you, it went as far as to say, because we know that when you retire, if you're not doing something else that you really enjoy, there could be things set in, like your activity could decrease.
Will decrease.
It will decrease.
I don't want to mince words with that. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, is probably, everything you do in business from probably 2017, 18, and 19, and I read about 2 books every 2 weeks. But everything boils down to habits, scalability, and what we call culture. A couple of which I think are poorly named, but that's immaterial. Habits are a big deal, and how you live your life is what controls much more of you than you know, right? And what James Clear made the point in Atomic Habits is you cannot get rid of a bad habit, right? We have some habits that we call are bad. I drink 4 cups of coffee a day. Some people who've known me when I had 3 pots a day would say that's exceptional. Other people would say you really need 4 cups to keep going, Clark. What's your problem, right? So it's a relative thing, right? But so we deem some things bad habits. We deem something good habits. Nobody says when I go to get on my elliptical or my spin bike that that's a bad habit, right? What Clear would say is that you simply cannot replace a habit without putting another habit in its place, right? And it can either be what some would call a ritual, where you're going to continue to function almost on autopilot, whether that be reading, listening to podcasts, drinking booze, smoking cigarettes. I mean, it could be what we would call good or bad, depending on who you are.
Right.
But you have to replace it with something. And the bottom line is, especially if you had to make a lot of decisions in your working days, when you retire, it becomes very, very dangerous. And we've seen people melt down.
Yes.
So it mentally, even if not physically, mentally, it is unhealthy to retire for some of us.
Yeah. So you don't want to do that too soon.
I would be a bad retiree. Just saying. I know me, right?
You couldn't just sit around and do nothing?
No. You know me well enough
Work on your golf game?
Yeah. No. That's that would work for like a week. Maybe.
A couple of other considerations that the article mentions is, health insurance. We don't know what that's going to be on down the road. Are your children financially independent?
Yeah, see, I don't like that question because you should not do your retirement, in my opinion. Your life after work should not be based on how your kids are at the time.
No, but what if you've already agreed to help pay for their college?
Well, okay, that's
and now you want to retire before.
If you want to go there, okay, that's
or the wedding hasn't taken place.
You should fulfill your commitments, but what we find in the real world, and guys do, if your friends think you need to spend $50,000 on your daughter's wedding, I would suggest you might want to find a different group of people at church, right? Because even if you can, doesn't mean you oughta, right? But no, seriously, it's, that's everybody's individual choice in terms of how they are, and what they are. I would be more worried about the health and the health insurance.
Yes.
And especially the mental stability of what's going on. People do retire early, deal with inflation, understand how it works, understand that retirement budget that we help you with at the Financial Enhancement Group. We break it into 2 areas, fixed and social expenses, and help you understand when it is you really can afford to enjoy your life after work. Give us a call, 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. We know you care about your money, but are you tired of worrying about it? The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people just like you who don't want to worry about their money. As fiduciaries, the team at the Financial Enhancement Group will care for your nest egg just like they would care for their own. If they were in your situation, there are many decisions you'll need to make as you face retirement, and the team at the Financial Enhancement Group is here to help you. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to set up a time to meet. The confusion and complexity of retirement is almost as daunting as is the excitement of retirement. Don't let your fear and frustration of taxes and investing derail your retirement. Call the Financial Enhancement Group at 800-928-4001. They'll give you a complimentary second opinion on your strategy for retirement. Begin your adventure in your life after work. Call 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Now back to Consider This program with Joe Clark.
Some things happen for a reason, and some things are simply inexplicable, as they would say. Interest rates this year may be one of them. If Alan Greenspan was still a Federal Reserve chair, you might hear again, ladies and gentlemen, we have a conundrum. Bottom line is interest rates have fallen, especially in the treasuries, by a large degree, and that has impacts on you. Today on Consider This, we're going to break down some things that you may very well want to consider. Welcome to Consider This. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
And we're happy to have you all along. You too, Angie.
Oh, well, thanks. I thought I was included anyway.
You were included.
Okay.
You know, you're a big part of the show. No, Angie, no questions. All right, Ange, this was your baby. So, and by the way, if you've got a question, something you want to know about or want us to talk about on the program financially, you can call 800-928-4001. And Angie's the first person you will talk to about what we do at the Financial Enhancement Group. And she's the one to take your questions and put them on the show. So here you go.
Okay, well, in the last segment, I asked too complicated of a question, and this is a pretty simple one. It might be too simple, but who controls the interest rates?
So that is a big, broad question that would appear to be very, very simple on one side. When you talk about interest rates in the banking world, the Federal Reserve is the one that is most in control of what those rates are. At the end of the day, however, it really is supply and demand. So Angie walks up to me, and Angie works for me, works for the Financial Enhancement Group, part of the team. I know that she's going to get paid next week. I know where the money's coming from. So you're a pretty sure bet in terms of having the ability to repay, right? So you ask to borrow $100, and I say yes or no, and then I have to charge an interest rate based on how much I need to make on my money, and I need to charge an interest rate based on the likelihood that I will get my money back, right? Because even though I know where you're getting paid, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to bring me my $100 before you bring your car payment people their $100, right?
Right.
And so the lower your credit worthiness, the higher rate you have to pay in interest. So part of it's assessed by the market. Part of it is assessed by the government borrowing money by the sale of bonds. So we often talk about the 10-year U.S. Treasury on our market carver. And if you want economic analysis, folks, we don't do that on this show because sometimes it's replayed. But we do put out a weekly video, comes out at 11 o'clock every afternoon on Thursday, called The Market Carver, where myself or Adam Harder, our CFA and Chief Investment Strategist, is one of my partners here in the company. We put together a video that explains some of this stuff to you, but we'll look at a 10-year U.S. Treasury, which has fallen from above 2.5% this year down below 1.75% this year. And that's about 30% off when it comes to a rate of return. Now, that doesn't mean, Angie, you can borrow money at that rate, but it does mean companies like Apple can borrow at that rate. Right?
Okay. So would now be a good time to refinance your home?
Well, let's ask Ken. That's what he does.
Yeah, even from a year ago, last year, we were, depends on your loan to value and your program and your credit score. The rates were probably in the high 4s, low 5s, and now they're in the low 4s at 4%, even under 4%, depends on your credit score. So yeah, now's a great time to refinance and even reduce your term from a 30 to a 20 or a 15 or a 10.
So it's not as simple as saying yes or no, but from an interest rate, if we're going to put it in a silo, what you said, Ken, is exactly the answer that I would provide. If you can lower your rate of return or your cost of money, where over the period of time that you have left to pay the mortgage, where it is worth going through the struggles of getting Ken the paperwork and filling out paperwork, so that kind of stuff just drives me insane. But especially if you've got 10 or 15 years left on your mortgage,
right,
you can essentially have your mortgage redone and possibly take off 2 to 3 years of period of time that you would pay on your mortgage to accelerate how quickly you could retire. It really depends on where it is. This is something that I look at every year. As long as I can deduct the interest on my home, and I itemize, as long as I can deduct it, and the cost of money is this cheap, I will probably always have a mortgage. But mine's at, I think, 3.85%. I said I think. I know exactly. It's 3.85%. So it's, it would have to get below that and make it worth the time for me to do it. But there are a lot of people out there. We see the numbers. Ken, I know, has the numbers. You'd be amazed at the number of people who still have 6, 7, and 8% mortgages that just do not know that they should be going and refinancing or that they can.
Well, what about other types of debt? I mean, why are student loan rates so much higher than, say, mortgage rates?
This is an interesting one, and part of it is because of that credit quality thing that we talked about before. And yet people will tell me, well, you can't declare bankruptcy on student debt. And that's not entirely true. If a judge signs off that you are worthless, I mean, I can't imagine going to court and say, please declare me absolutely worthless. But it's happened. If a judge declares you worthless, you actually can discharge that. But again, it gets into supply and demand. That people know that parents will pay the interest, right? And yeah, if I can get more out of that's what you pay me to do when we manage money, Angie, is to figure out how to give you the least amount of risk with the greatest amount of return. Right? I mean, that's our job. That's what we get paid to do for right at 1,000 families across the country.
Boy, I wish I would have taken the time to research and see what the default rate on student loans at a higher interest rate would be compared to mortgages at a low rate.
And it is one of those things, and Ken may know more about this, but it's one of those things when the government gives you the ability, or not the government, but when lenders give you the ability to roll student debt in together, combine loans. Sometimes that helps with your debt-to-income ratio, so it helps on your side, Ken, for people getting mortgages. But sometimes you lose some of that protection that also comes from the federal government in case you are working for a not-for-profit or other places. So, you've got to be careful when you combine them. Anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, we see a lot of student debt come in, and, repayment plans are all across the board. There's an income-based repayment plan. There's a level term payment plan over, I can't remember, the 24 years, I think, is the max, maybe 25, I can't remember. There are some social programs where we had a social worker come in, and she said, my student debt will be forgiven in 10 years as long as I keep the same type of a job. So there's somewhere in deferment. So you see a lot of things going on, but when you try to get a mortgage, make sure you have a payment in place, because if you don't, we have to take 1% of the balance for your monthly payment. So it could get a little expensive if you don't have something in place.
So just because some of us talk and people don't understand, I'm going to say what Ken said again. You probably understand him better than me, but here's the deal. You need to be making payments on your debt when you go to get a mortgage. Otherwise, they will assign you a payment, and you may not like what they assign you. That's the easiest way to do it.
Correct.
Debt-to-income ratio, remember, Angie, is the amount of income that you made divided by your fixed amount of monthly obligations, not your total indebtedness. And you'd be amazed the number of students I had at Purdue that missed that their senior year on their final exam. So don't miss that. It's not your total debt. It's what your monthly obligations are.
So what about interest rates on credit cards?
What about them?
Well, interest rates, will the interest rates on the cards go down as the prime rate or the...
What I'm finding, I had this conversation with somebody because I don't pay. We use credit cards. They're my generation's green stamps. Do you remember what green stamps are? Have we talked about those?
No,
Ken?
I don't.
So we used to go to Miller's Milk House in Muncie, Indiana, and get green stamps when we bought stuff. Right now we get credit card points. So you and I use credit cards. We just pay them off at the end of the month, and and we do those. And I noticed one of them, the interest rate was like 14%, and I never have a balance, so it didn't hit me.
Right.
But it's kind of like, wow. Most of the time it's higher it's annual expense that we pay that are on the credit cards. But interest rates are out there. Pay attention to them. Get lower interest rates when you can, but make sure you have a payment that is fixed of some nature. 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. Joe's been hosting financial radio programs for over 20 years, and during his 7 years at Purdue, Joe developed the 5 critical elements. You see, there are 5 areas we all go through that can impact and even derail our retirement plans. YourLifeAfterWork.com has been focused on you on your retirement for over 20 years. You may have had a 401k as well as IRAs. Those are all defined contribution plans. Consider this program is about your defined contribution plans becoming defined distributions. You see, we all exit. You'll either take money out of those retirement plans when you decide or when the IRS decides, or your heirs will have to deal with the situation, but we all exit. I encourage you to call 800-928-4001 to meet with one of the talented financial advisors at the Financial Enhancement Group. I've listened to this show for years, and what Joe says just makes sense. Don't you think it's time for you to call 800-928-4001, YourLifeAfterWork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
The tax code is full of all sorts of crazy names, like a 60 rollover. It's like Omaha. No, it's not a football game. This truly is a tax opportunity for people to take advantage of and get themselves into trouble. Let me stress that again. In my entire 31-year career, I don't believe I have ever told anybody, hey, here's a good idea. Let's do a 60-day rollover. However, we get calls on them at least monthly. How do you do this? Should we do it? Angie's got some questions. We're going to break them down for you. Welcome to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
So a 60-day rollover, Ange. Why don't you tell me what that is? And we'll put it in your terms, and then we'll try Ken's, and then we'll adjust and fix.
Well, if you take a distribution from a qualified plan, your IRA, your 401k,
Meep.
and
Meep.
you're not old enough to take
Meep.
it yet.
You've already been buzzed. Meep. Go ahead, Ken.
60-day rollover?
Yeah, and this is not Omaha. Peyton is not in the house, right? A 60-day rollover, right?
I have no idea. I'm not even going to try to answer it and get buzzed.
So
Okay.
Angie did.
So where you want to try again?
Yes.
Okay.
It's when you need to it's the amount of time that you have to replace money into your qualified plan if you took it out.
Bam. See, that's where you were getting into trouble.
Okay.
So again, when people are taxed alike, they think other rules are alike. And this is what gets people into mischief,
Okay.
right? IRAs and 401ks and or Department of Labor plans are two entirely separate things.
Okay.
If you could see me right now, I've stretched my fingers as far apart from one another as I can. They are both taxed the same way, right? You have to be 59 and a half in most cases to get money out. You cannot do a 60-day rollover from a qualified plan. You can only do 60-day rollovers from IRAs, all right? So now go back to explain it. For some reason, I want money out of my IRA, and now what?
And you're under 59 and a half, or for whatever reason you're going to have a penalty, but you want to use that money maybe
Temporarily would be the key word.
temporarily. Basically, what it's saying, for it to not be a taxable event, it has to be replaced into another qualified plan within 60 days, or
No, another IRA.
another IRA within 60 days.
And not your wife's IRA, in my
Has
case.
to be yours.
Husband's IRA in your case.
Yes.
Right?
Can't be just any
Can't-
plan. No.
can't be,
No.
Ken, I'm going to put it in your IRA.
You
And Ken
wouldn't
says,
care.
thank you very much.
Yes.
Except he would have an excess contribution and subject to a 6% penalty per every year.
Okay, so all of this to say we had a question. And the question is, can I use my IRA for a short-term loan even though I'm only 50?
Yes. Should you?
No.
No. Can you? Yes. Right? So, and they are very, very serious about the 60 days, by the way. A private letter ruling is $10,000, and it takes a private letter ruling to get out of this, right? So you have to have borrowed a lot of money out of your IRA to make it worth doing worth a private letter ruling, a PLR, as we would call it. So they have self-certifications in 60-day rollover failures. It happens so often. We've done maybe 15 of these in 31 years, right? I mean, anything I can do to discourage this from occurring. Because, Ken, have you ever had a plan not work out?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, it just happens. We had a few brothers that wanted to take care of one of their brothers who was going through a hard time, going through a divorce, going to buy a house, going to sell his house, had an offer on his house. Ken, have you ever seen an offer not go through?
Yep.
Oh man,
Of course.
I can't imagine this happening. So one brother calls and says, "Hey, we're going to take care of our other brother, and we're going to borrow money out of Mom's IRA." I mean, I can't tell you how many flags I was waving, jumping from tables, screaming, "This is a really, really bad idea." You'll never guess, Ken, but the mortgage fell through.
Oh, no.
Right? So now Mom had $200,000 out of her IRA. So she was over 59 and a half. So you avoided the 10% penalty, but all of that money was taxed in 1 year.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So you took a lady who was essentially in the 10% tax bracket and suddenly found herself in the 20, at that point in time, 25, 28% tax bracket. Just ugly.
Yeah.
Sheer ugly,
So you
right?
better be pretty sure.
Yeah. And you should really, 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 really never do it if you can help yourself. Now, I am going to tell you this because she brought up the qualified plan. In a 401k, if you borrow money, if your 401k plan allows you to borrow, you can borrow from the 401k plan. That is not a 60-day rollover. If it's for your primary residence, you have an extended period of time to pay it back depending on the plan document. If it's in a loan for anything else, you have to pay the money back in 5 years, and that money has to come out of your paycheck, right? So it's not 60 days, it's 5 years.
Okay.
So if somebody was going to borrow money out of a 401k that they hoped that they could get back in the 60 days, anytime you take money, take a distribution out of your 401k, by law, they have to withhold 20%, Ken. So 20% is withheld for taxes, sent straight to the federal government, right? If you rolled that money instead to an IRA, right? Instead to an IRA, there's no taxes withheld as long as the 401k plan provider will allow you to do that. Then you take the money from the IRA in the 60-day rollover. Now you have no taxes withheld. And as long as you can indeed put the money back in 60 days, you're okay. When it comes to IRAs, the rule book is called Publication 590. And Pub 590 a few years ago was very, very clear. You could do a 60-day rollover every calendar year. And the bottom line is that what they really mean is every 365 days. So if you did one October 1st, you've got until September 30th of the following year to be able, that you can't do it again, right? It's got to be a calendar year, and that's for all of my IRAs. Now, Barb has the option to do the same with hers, right, if we would ever get into that period of time.
This question has to do with a 401k, and it says, what happens to your 401k if you leave your job, but you don't roll it into something else?
Stays in the 401k. If your amount is under a certain dollar figure, the Department of Labor says your plan provider, that's your 401k, can force you out of the plan. And so you'll get letters if you have, maybe under $5,000. It depends. Most of the time I see them, they're $3,000 or $4,000. Your daughter may get one when she leaves IU and she graduates if she's working someplace that has a 401k now. And, hey, you've got to move this money now or we're going to send you a check with all of those taxes and penalties applied.
Would that just be because they have expenses to maintain the plan?
Yes, there's expenses for each and every participant. And so what happens is when she gets her full-time job, she can roll that money usually into the next 401k plan. Very few 401k provider or plan sponsors won't let you go from 401k to 401k. There are some that will not let you go from an IRA to a 401k, which you can clearly do.
Okay. Well, and I know too, a lot of times when you do a rollover, it's going to go directly from one account to another account. But sometimes you take possession of the money. And so this question is, how do you report an indirect rollover?
So an indirect rollover is when you actually get that check. That's at 60 days. And what we see happen, sadly enough, and really confusing to people, is let's say you borrowed the money December 30th or December 1st, right? So you did it. You're going to get a 1099-R that shows you had a taxable distribution that's going to go to the federal government, and you're going to have to give that to your tax provider. Now, let's say January 15th, 45 days later, you redeposited the money. Well, your provider, your custodian, is going to send you a corrected 1099-R that shows you made a contribution within the 60-day period of time. But you're not going to get that until the following year for tax reporting of that year, right? So you got to be Johnny on the spot, make sure you understand what happened, your provider understood what happened. And it's very easy for the IRS or for somebody to get confused in this mess. And it's a big deal. Stay away from 60-day rollovers if you can. Remember, folks, if you want to do this on your own, that is your business. If you want to find a fiduciary, that is our business. At the Financial Enhancement Group, we help people break down things like staying out of 60-day rollovers if you can. But if you're going to do them, we reduce financial regrets. We help you figure out the best way for you to access your money, whether that be for your life after work or what some would call retirement, or whether that be for a thing that's happened today, the good and bad and ugly of life. Give Angie a call, 800-928-4001.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. We know you care about your money, but are you tired of worrying about it? The Financial Enhancement Group takes care of people just like you who don't want to worry about their money. As fiduciaries, the team at the Financial Enhancement Group will care for your nest egg just like they would care for their own if they were in your situation. There are many decisions you'll need to make as you face retirement, and the team at the Financial Enhancement Group is here to help you. Call 800-928-4001 or go to yourlifeafterwork.com to set up a time to meet. The confusion and complexity of retirement is almost as daunting as is the excitement of retirement. Don't let your fear and frustration of taxes and investing derail your retirement. Call the Financial Enhancement Group at 800-928-4001. They'll give you a complimentary second opinion on your strategy for retirement. Begin your adventure in your life after work. Call 800-928-4001 or yourlifeafterwork.com. Now back to Consider This program with Joe Clark.
Welcome back to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
We're happy to have you along. Hey, we hit 4 exciting topics this week. So, Angie, you're responsible for a recap. Ken, you're responsible for answering the questions. I'm going to drink coffee.
Oh, wow.
I think
That's
it's
a lot
fun.
of pressure.
So, the first conversation, Angie, was
Timing your retirement.
timing your retirement.
And
That's pretty good. Can you time your retirement? If you don't get fired, laid off, replaced,
Yes.
have bad health, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so the first segment, we talked about what if you want to wait and prolong retiring, whereas the second segment, we talked about can you retire early? What if you retire too early? We also talked about
So,
how...
Ken, did you learn anything in retiring too? I mean, you right at this point in time, you'd be retiring too early. You've already told
Correct.
us in a previous show you did that too early from the NFL.
I don't know about too early.
You said you'd play one more season if you could do it over.
Yeah,
See, I
if
keep track-
could.
I
If-
keep
if
track of
my-
all this
if
stuff.
My ankles and my knees didn't hurt so bad. I probably would have. I would have thought about it more, but yeah, it was.
Was that an easy decision or just
no,
something
it
you
was
thought?
tough. It was a little bit tough, especially going through your last couple of games of the season, kind of knowing that this is the end, I guess.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was.
I quit doing the radio in 2007. I took a year off,
Mhm.
and I was wet-eyed and everything else, telling people goodbye on that last show.
Aw.
I can't. I have no idea how people do it, and I've got folks in Lafayette that have worked like you and I have worked for 30 years, and one of them went and retired at lunch and's never gone back. How do you stand next to somebody for 30 years and not even go back
He
after
retired
lunch?
at lunch?
At lunch. He said he just had enough. Didn't even tell the guy. Didn't tell us,
Well, there was
boss.
a couple of NFL players retired like at halftime. He just
Yeah,
left and never came back.
That's an interesting world. So you can retire too early. Sometimes you're forced into it. Sometimes it's by your own design. But you can go back and listen to that conversation. We gave you some things to think about. And then there's the people who just want to keep going. And I will never retire until my mind or my body forces me to. So I can either do this for free, Ken, or I can get paid. Right. So I think my kids would prefer the latter. So with the charitable organizations we take care of. So I will probably keep doing this as long as I possibly can. We had somebody, and it was really a great question, said, Joe, what's your succession plan? And it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? I'm not getting hit by a bus today that I know of, right? I still have to get home tonight. But I have 3 other partners who own part of the company, and a director of financial planning who stays up on all of the financial planning part, a CFA who's our chief investment strategist that takes care of the investment side, a chief of compliance officer that really runs a lot of the business side along with our business manager, and I get to do the radio and and kind of direct things just because I was the first one that showed up. I mean, that's this has nothing to do with being smarter. It just has to be with I was the one who was here
So
first.
you actually chose to do this?
I did. 2 weeks before the crash in '87, 3 weeks before the crash, I was managing a health club and selling health memberships. And this guy walked up to me and he said, if you can sell me a health membership, you really need to be in the insurance industry. And I said, well, you tell me what, I was at IU at the time, and he tell me what you mean. And he told me, and I went through and started getting some of the licensing. And 2 weeks later, the market crashed on a Monday that we call Black Monday. And I showed up. The secretary was crying. Everybody else quit. So I was the Rodney Dangerfield. I had to teach myself about all of this stuff because I'd already committed to doing it, got rid of the other job, right? You know, you thought you had a job, right? I got retired early, right? And my knees didn't hurt, Ken. And that's kind of how all of this started. So I had to work some other jobs on the side, you know, while I was able to get the education that I needed, and eventually my CFP, and then wound up teaching at Purdue, and we started the Financial Enhancement Group back in '97. And yes, intentionally, there was none of this that I left, much to my in-laws' chagrin. I was the youngest employee in the state of Indiana for AT&T, and had this great union job, quote unquote, health insurance, 401k, had all of these things, and I quit 2 weeks. All this happened 2 weeks before we got married. Is when I decided it was time to go full time into the industry. So without really talking with my in-laws or my parents or Barb for that matter,
Just quit.
I kind of told them at lunch, here's my 2 week notice, and they said, we don't need 2 weeks, Clark. You go enjoy your life, and I did. So here we are. So life's good.
Okay, so in our third segment, we talked about how falling interest rates can impact you in different areas, whether it be installment loans, credit cards, mortgage loans, things like that. One thing we didn't cover was how does it affect what you can make as far as on your savings or your CDs.
Right. It's an inverse thing. I have a gentleman in so people who own farm ground don't sell it unless they have to.
Right.
Right. The people who farmed it. Now, sometimes their kids do. So they just take the money and they keep putting it back into the farm. And it's why I always thank farmers when they have a thankless job. They have to fight Mother Nature, which is a losing battle. And they do their best to be profitable. Some are better than others. But people who have CDs, especially in the past, are very, very similar in nature to farmers. They just put the money back in. So CD declares interest quarterly. You know what it's going to be because you have a fixed interest rate. The CD pays the interest rate quarterly, and it goes back into the CDs for most of these people. They don't live on the income. And so I remember meeting a guy, we'll just call him Bob, at one of my offices, and he and his wife had saved up a little over $1 million in CDs. And interest rates had continued to fall and to fall and to fall. And it was about 2010. And I'm sitting down with him, and he finally looked at me, and he took his hat off, one of my Irish, Scottish golf hats that I like so much, and a baseball hat. He puts it on his knee, and he says, "Okay, Joe, tell me the truth." I go, "Well, what's that, Bob?" He says, "I don't understand why I have more income today and interest rates are lower than I had before." And I had to say it again. What? He said, "I don't understand why I have more income." And when he meant income, Ken, he meant money in his checkbook. He said, "I don't understand why I have more income and interest rates are lower." And what was happening was he and everybody else that put all of their money back in their CDs for years and years and years, he'd been using his checkbook money, his income stream, to pay the taxes on what the interest was for the CDs, so that all of the CDs continued to roll into more CDs and bigger CDs, and he grew his farm ground, except instead of being a farm, it was a CD. And in his mind, he hadn't put two and two together. His interest rate was lower, thus his taxes were lower, thus he had more spendable income in his checkbook. And that is really some of the confusion that we see, and it happens all the time. And it's one of the things that we focus on here at the Financial Enhancement Group, is trying to help people better understand their money. At the end of the day, we reduce financial regret. That's our job. And again, if you want to do it on your own, that's your business. If you're looking for a fiduciary, that's really our business. Giving Angie a call at 800-928-4001. She'll get you set up with one of our advisors. We can sit down and have an intelligent conversation where we promise to do three things. First, we'll tell you things you should consider today, things you may want to consider in the future, and last but not least, we'll tell you what we'll do for you in a written form if we partner together. Have a great weekend, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
Hi, Joni Michaels here. Joe's been hosting financial radio programs for over 20 years, and during his 7 years at Purdue, Joe developed the 5 critical elements. You see, there are 5 areas we all go through that can impact and even derail our retirement plans. YourLifeAfterWork.com has been focused on you, on your retirement for over 20 years. You may have had a 401k as well as IRAs. Those are all defined contribution plans. Consider this program is about your defined contribution plans becoming defined distributions. You see, we all exit. You'll either take money out of those retirement plans when you decide or when the IRS decides, or your heirs will have to deal with the situation, but we all exit. I encourage you to call 800-928-4001 to meet with one of the talented financial advisors at the Financial Enhancement Group. I've listened to this show for years, and what Joe says just makes sense. Don't you think it's time for you to call 800-928-4001, yourlifeafterwork.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Welcome to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Ken Dilger.
And I'm Angie Kinzer.
I enjoyed today's show, Angie.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the questions and comments that you put in. Right. So I guess that other people put in, you collected, right? So if you've got one, you can call Angie at 800-928-4001. She's the one responsible for putting together the content for the show. So I won't call her a producer because she's so much more than that. But, you know, that's kind of the deal.
Well, and in our segment 4, it kind of felt like the Gong Show today.
The Gong Show?
Yes.
What?
You kept gonging me when I was trying to answer.
Well, that's because you got the wrong answer.
I know, but that's why it was funny.
It is, okay, because you got the wrong answer. It was funny, or because I went, bam,
Yes.
bam. Yeah, the Gong Show. Now we are really aging ourselves. Do you
I
remember
know.
what the Gong Show was?
Oh, of course. I
Okay.
love the Gong Show.
The comedian with the paper bag over his head. You know, I could never have done that. But
And Gene the dancing
Gene
machine.
Gene the dancing machine. We have a few of those at the office. I think it's that is pretty cool. Yeah. So here's what happens, and I wasn't really trying to pick on Angie, but you know, if I ask her the question how to do a 60-day rollover, she knows that you can't do it in a qualified plan. And yet she couldn't help herself but from saying from a qualified plan.
I know.
Because people get flustered, right? I mean, it is so, there are so many moving parts. And every now and then somebody will say, well, Joe, if I don't want to pay the 10% penalty, I mean, let's just make it worse, right? I don't want to pay the 10% penalty, but I need to get money out of my IRA, and I'm not 59 and a half. So if there's anything worse than a 60-day rollover, it's called a 72T, right? Now, I'm going to give you a series of words, and Ken and Angie can testify to you. I have nothing in front of me to do this, but these words are, if you miss one word, then you've got 10% penalties all the way back. But a 72T is a substantially equal periodic payment unchanged for the greater of 5 years or 59 and a half. Right? Substantially equal means you're taking out income, either the same percentage amount every year or the same amount every year. Equal payment, it's coming out either quarterly, monthly, or at least one time a year. Substantially equal periodic payment, unchanged. You're stuck with it. So Ken, you drop out of the NFL, and yeah, I know that sounded bad, but you know, you're out of the NFL and you decide you're going to do a 72T on your IRA, and all of a sudden somebody calls you and needs you to come in and catch a ball. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got income coming in, and you still get the 72T because it's unchanged without paying a horrendous penalty. Substantially equal periodic payment, unchanged for the greater of 5 years or 59 and a half. So make sure you never do something like this at 55 or you're stuck till 60. You do it at 57, you're stuck till 62, right? It's whichever is greater, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. You even had your arms behind your back.
That's because I was counting my fingers to make sure I got. No, I can do it this way too. I mean, hey, look, no notes. No, it's just, it is one of those things that I have seen cripple people's retirements, and you just don't want to let it happen. You know, when we tell people that we reduce financial regret, it's because a team of 29 of us have the ability to work together to make sure that I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and things don't fall through the cracks. Thank you for your work on the show this week, Ken. Great having you. You guys have a question or comment? Give us a call, 800-928-4001. Have an outstanding week. We'll see you again next time.
You've been listening to Consider This Program with Joe Clark. As a certified financial planner, former professor at Purdue University, and with 31 years of experience helping families just like you eliminate the fear and confusion of retirement, Joe's team has the answers to your questions. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com or call 800-928-4001 and find a time to meet with the Financial Enhancement Group. There's nothing that will separate you from your retirement as fast as the IRS. There are many questions that can be answered at the Financial Enhancement Group. Questions questions like when to take Social Security, how will my 401k be taxed? These questions are just the tip of the iceberg, and you need to be asking these questions now before it's too late. The Financial Enhancement Group has offices in Anderson, Fishers, and Lafayette, Indiana, but they also take care of families in 30 other states. You care about your retirement, you don't want to worry about your money? Then the Financial Enhancement Group is right for you. As fiduciaries, they are required by law to treat your money as if it were their own and they were in the same situation. Call